1. The princess no one knew. Penny was a princess nobody knew. One who never saw her castle until she was 9. The underground cellar was her home, or lair, as some called it. Her residence wasn't the only thing unfitting of a royal, though. She was born ugly, being the one feature that opposed her bloodline's defining trait: beauty. Penny slipped out from the thin sheets of her cellar bed, drawing her little toes against the chill of the stone floor. Outside, she heard the crack of a whip as someone drove a horse and buggy from the castle stables, cantering toward town beyond the castle walls. The sound brought the promise of a new day. Always, Penny could allow herself a moment of daydream, wondering what the yonder town looked like this time of year. Wasn't it autumn? Midway through October. Wouldn't the trees be blossoming in oranges and reds, tossing their leaves through the air? A thin slice of sunlight eased through the tiny window in the cellar corner. In that light, Penny put on the onyx dress and presented herself before a dusty mirror standing at the corner of her cell. Maybe today she would meet others who looked similar. Everywhere else she stood out like a black sheep. She tilted, trying to even out her asymmetrical face, but lost her balance and crashed onto her bum. Upon seeing her improper reflection, she dragged the frock over her clenched knees. Finally, a tuft of scraggy hair fell. Sweeping it away didn't work. Her hand just snagged inside. Stunned by the series of mishaps, Penny suddenly leapt up, brushed off the frock, and sighed. The girl was only 9, but she knew she was nothing like her beautiful mother and her 2 sisters, who were what a royal should look like. Her little heart thundered at that thought. Remaining opposite her reflection, she curved her attention away from her big nose, squared jaw face, and plump build. She focused on the fabric instead. It was the dress she loved most, the one she'd chosen especially for this day. Fortunately, there was no dirt on its back from her fall to the stone floor. Penny wanted it to look perfect for the day, but peering down at the dark fabric caught sight of her plump feet again. At least her shoes could cover those. Her big nose was another story. Quite inexplicably, the girl twirled, arms outstretched, head thrown back. She paced around the cell, danced almost. In her mind, she imagined those autumnal leaves she'd read about in books. The hustle and bustle of commoners chatting as carriages passed. Felt free wind on her back. Encountered all the animals and buildings that she'd read about. She saw them with the clarity of a diamond in the clearest light. The girl hummed calmly, and the tune became fine. It was always the way with her. Sometimes her voice was clear and gentle, probably the only thing about herself she was most proud of. Other times, she found notes so fine that they might tremble into nothingness. She hummed with the texture of wind pouring over silk. Her fingers rolled across the bars of the cellar. Those bars were the border of her unusual world, housing her in a small corner of the cellar. Yonder were the stairs. There was no way of continuing on, so she turned back inside her simple abode. There wasn't much to avoid on her adventures. The 3-legged stool was one, which she hopped over, like a giant stepping over mountains. The stone floor was what the sea might look like. In the pale glow of twilight, she swooped across it like a bird through the air. At one side of her cell was the half-timber bed. It had thin, gray sheets. At its foot lay a bunch of stacked books. To her daydreaming mind, they glowed a deep yellow, like thick bars of gold gleaming against sunlight. Those were her treasures. Penny would have sold her bed and slept on the floor if it meant keeping her book collection. It was growing nicely, piled in 3 rows, reaching her waist in height. She imagined being an explorer, a pioneer, or a princess on foreign diplomatic duties, seeing new worlds, winning spoils from quick-witted negotiations and trades. As she waited, she grabbed a book from her collection, one that told a story about one of the 7 fairy kingdoms said to exist at the distant borders of the world. It was about the tales of Dragon's Rift, the kingdom of dragons. Opening it, her eyes trailed along the first page.